Hello, I'm Paul Perello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. For more than 30 years, there's been an organization founded and established in Philadelphia that has provided a home away from home for sick children and their families. The first Ronald McDonald House opened its doors in 1974 after a member of the Philadelphia Eagles had his daughter take ill. The daughter treated at Children's Hospital for leukemia, and the rest, as they say, is history. Today, there are more than 270 Ronald McDonald houses around the world in 28 countries, providing a home away from home for the families of sick children. The success of the Ronald McDonald House is remarkable and rests with the drive, the vision, and determination of many people, including our guest here on the Philly Factor, Mr. Jim Murray, the founder of the first Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia. And my friend, welcome to the Philly Factor.
It's exciting. I like the alliteration. Anything Philly turns me on. So Philly Factor, fabulous.
Yep. Well, we thank you for your time. I know you're a very busy guy, taking time out of your schedule to be with us to talk about a project that I know continues to be very near and dear to your heart. How did the whole concept and idea of the Ronald McDonald House come to the forefront?
Well, once again, it's the Philly Factor, and because it's Philadelphia, I think the McMiracle is very significant that it started here. And what's everything start with? A beautiful woman, and this was a little girl, Kim Hill. You mentioned her earlier, and she came down unfortunately with leukemia. And the Eagles team, and this is the power of sport for good, they all got together and started a nonprofit. There was a guy named Stan Lane, a guy over in Jersey, and some of the neighbors of Fred Hill. And Fred was Dick Vermeil. He was the perfect looking guy, central casting, looked like he jumped off the cornflakes box, All-American, football and baseball player. And when this happened, his world changed forever. And I'm sure people out there watching and listening know that one phone call can change your life.
Sure.
So when that call came in, forget all the football stuff, and then what happened is very Philly, very community. The whole team rallied around him. As I said, they started something in the neighborhood. They all live in Jersey, the Philly guys. And it was called Eagles Fly for Leukemia. Not grammatically correct, but the definition of a second commandment. Hey, let's get together and try to help Fred and Kim and Fran. And so the first event, I'll never forget, it was a holy event of obligation because the women ran it.
Sure.
And it was a fashion show over in Jersey. So they were all there. And I remember Leonard Toes, Pete Retzlaff, who hired me, who was the GM. Eddie Kyatt was our coach. And I'm back way in the 700 level, and I get summoned, come up here, Jimmy, maybe we should make this our charity. Well, I panic. I mean, I totally panic. First of all, couldn't spell leukemia. Unfortunately, flunked biology 3 times at Villanova. I was always at baseball practice with Art Mann, my mentor, who's still alive. And what's a 501c3? And this school, LaSalle University, has the great Center for 501c3.
Sure.
I have a lot of friends who've gone through the program and started charities. But this was the mustard seed. This was the beginning. So I just prayed about it. I had no idea what to do. And I thought, well, if you're going to take people's money, the first thing is, where does the money go? So that I thought was an implicit first step. And Leonard said, we'll pay all the expenses, see what they need. So I went up to St. Christopher's Hospital, and the old St. Chris's near Shibe Park, Lehigh Avenue. And I went to see Kim Hill's doctor, a man named Laurie Naiman, just retired from Stanford. And I'm the guy who went to show up, Paul. I have the blank check from Leonard Toes in the office.
Yeah.
So I walk in, and I'm the genie. I'm, John Beresford Tipton for the old viewers. I'm, what do you need? And he said, well, look at this place. We need everything. And then he paused for a minute, and he said something that I know blessed, changed was the mantra for this whole thing. And in that pause, he said, there's someone with a greater need. Now, I realize this guy doesn't know if I'm $5 or $5 million.
Exactly.
I'm here with Leonard Toes, the most generous man that ever owned a sports team. And he said, there's a woman. Her name's Audrey Evans. She's at 18th and Bainbridge, where Children's Hospital was. They're going to move to the Penn campus. So maybe you should go see her. I'll never forget, I went downstairs, and they had a meditation room. Now, no Quran, no Bible, no cross. I mean, it was barren. 7 chairs like the 7 sacraments. And I'm panicked. I'm looking up, asking God, and the ceiling's falling down. But I remember looking to my left, and there were young kids from the neighborhood having kids. And there were all these beautiful midwives and nurses. So it was a moment. Hey, I had the one moment, I said, I think something good's going to come of this. Now I get my reality. I meet my first, you talk about being overmatched. I go see Dr. Audrey Evans, world-class oncologist. I didn't even know oncology was cancer.
Sure, right.
From Wales. And to say she was direct would be like getting hit with a fungo in the face.
Right.
I mean, this woman, I don't want to be, but anyways, a beautiful, stately woman. And, I'm Jim Murray from the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, what are they? I said, well, we're on TV every week.
Right.
Well, I don't have a TV. But I'm not being a chauvinist because I know women are much stronger, better than us. And I said, we're the Philadelphia Eagles. We're in town. We can help you get money. As soon as I said money, oh. So I said, now we're going to meet my great concentration span. So let's go down there. Explain to me something listener-friendly that we can ask them for.
Right.
So she explains at the new hospital on the cancer floor, they're going to need what she called a life island. And this was going to be a room where kids after radiation and chemo need to be in a sterilized environment. So I'm the ESPN guy. I'm stumbling, bumbling. Leonard cuts me right off at the knees and asked his famous question, how much? And Dr. Evans would not be bashful. She said 50,000. How many rooms? Well, 2, that's 100. But Leonard's the guy who was a little outrageous with money. And he said, no, how much for the whole floor? And she didn't hesitate. She said, well, Mr. Toes, that'll be at least $1 million. And he said, well, let me tell you. He says, the Eagles pledge $1 million, Dr. Evans. And then he said, and Jimmy will raise it. Paul will do it. Oh. So I'm going for the rosaries now. Oh, my God. What do I do? Well, when you have a good idea, it has many fathers. You have a bad idea, you own it.
Sure.
And I'll try to give you the short version. So I'm thinking, we had a realistic goal, 50,000 for the first big event. And now we're moving to this new stadium, which isn't there.
Right.
Veteran Stadium.
Yeah.
And WIP Radio went to Dean Tyler, and I said, can we have this radiothon? And then my old boss, Pete Retzlaff, used to be on WCAU. I said, Pete, could we go to the station, get a little crawl before, when he just told you tornadoes, the weather?
Right.
And in the old days, when the phone company was the Vatican, you only called one person, 40 phones. So we had a huge table as big as a studio. We had all the old Eagles, the Bednareks, the McDonalds, their wives, the guys in the taxi squad. And we're playing the 49ers in Kezar Stadium. The only people are going are Seagulls and me. It's not like the Eagles. But I know we'll get to 50,000 because everybody's home freezing, watching an Eagles game.
Sure.
And boom, what happens? Well, I'm back in steerage. Leonard's having a few Gatorades up in the front of the plane. God has a sense of humor. We get down 21 zip, whatever the score was. I get called to the front of the plane. How did you do with your promotion? I said, well, I called back, and they were some guys from South Philly who bet the games calling it. We couldn't even let the linebackers answer them. So I cut off the phones. How much? I said, $18. You're not even afraid. You got a lousy $18. You got to get 50,000. And don't give me the God stuff. I said, well, no, I don't want to hear it. So sure enough, to make the story real short, we cut the phones off, and Leonard said, I'm going to invite my friends. You're having a party. This was the second event. $500 a couple. I said, well, that eliminates my neighborhood. And a few more Gatorades. How about $1,000 a couple? Eliminates my neighborhood. So anyway, we had the party. WIP did like 3-4 hours a team. And we didn't raise 50. We raised $125,000.
Wow.
So I was one happy Irishman. Plus, I wanted to get her off my case. So I go over to a place I was in the other night. I think it's called Bullies now, but it was called the Blue Line, a little place in the Spectrum, Flyers, Sixers place. And she's there with her associate, Dr. Mickey Donaldson. And I just want to hand her that check and say, thank you, I'll see you in 6 months.
Right.
But typical of a woman, and once again, I'm not a chauvinist, as she's taking the check, she says, Jimmy, do you know what else we need? I said, Doc, we're in for $1 million, here's $1.25. And she changed my life. She changed she changed millions of people's lives with that statement. I said, no. She said, do you have any idea when I tell a family their child has leukemia, and this is 35 years ago, they don't hear one word I say. I've got on my white smock, my stethoscope. I've just changed their life, their kids' life. The divorce rate is 75%. The guys leave. I mean, it's like a tsunami.
Sure.
But I'm Irish, Catholic. I'm having kids every 5 minutes. I'm thinking, my God, if a doctor ever told me one of my kids had a disease that might take them. So she said, I want to get a YMCA. I want to put these families together so they can lean on each other emotionally. And I said, that makes sense. So she said, but I said, no, you're in Philly Factor.
Yep.
I said, we're neighborhood guys. Somebody got sick. My mom got sick. Somebody made the chicken soup. There were no door locks. We all hugged each other. You need a house. And then, open mouth, insert foot, will get us a house. And then I didn't know what to do. I really went to the Rosaries. And I called a guy named Don Tuckerman, who was he was the account manager for McDonald's. We had done another promotion. So I called him, Don, Jimmy Murray, what's your next promotion for Mickey D's? Right now. Oh, he said, Shamrock Shakes, St. Patrick's Day. I said, wait a minute, Irish guy calls Jewish guy, green milkshakes, green money. Can I get 25 cents from each Shamrock Shake? I said, we got one good player, Roman Gabriel, and we'll do a commercial. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, let me talk to Ed Renzi. I said, who's he? A regional manager. Later became president of McDonald's. So Ed Renzi called me 48 hours, FedEx from God. Jimmy, Ed Renzi, if we give you all the money from the Shamrock Shakes, can we call it the Ronald McDonald House?
Wow.
I said, whoa, I'm from 812 Brooklyn Street, but I'll tell you what, you give me all the money and call it the Hamburger House, I don't care what you... But God's hand was in that, Paul. Because you know what? By naming it after Ronald, if you're at the house in Hong Kong, in Paris, France, in Toronto, or in Philadelphia, or the new house at St. Christmas, a child's not afraid to walk through that door because that clown's there. So that little mustard seed, then what do? How do you get a house? And I'll never forget, we had a little place, 4032 Spruce Street, because Penn buys everything.
Right.
And we had this little 7-bedroom house. In fact, I talked to the first house manager today. Her name was Judy Bloor, and God sent her. Her husband was going to anesthesiologist school, Wally, and they were starting to have babies. And that was the birth of the first Ronald House, October 15th, 1974. Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, Tommy Brookshire out front, John Hentz, my buddy from NFL Films and the Sables, bringing the crew over, Harold Carmichael still on the sidelines with the Eagles, Bill Berge, Roman Gabriel, and Leonard Toews handing a check to a guy named Perino from Continental Bank and presenting a guy named Dick Wood who started something called Wawa.
That's right, yeah.
He was the chairman of the board. So here was this miracle. And then, once again, it's too long a story, but I'm Irish.
Yeah.
It's almost St. Patrick's Day. But the next house was really important. There was a beautiful lawyer named Charlie Marino, and his daughter, Gage, was afflicted with leukemia, and he went to his doctor. And one of the great things about the improvements they made in medicine and the miracles of kids being cured, that Kim Hill's still with us, 41 years old, is that he saw people in Chicago, where he was from, eating out of vending machines, sleeping on cots. And he went to his oncologist, this guy named Ed Baum, and he said, well, why don't people have a place to stay, don't they? And he said, well, there's something in Philly. So Charlie and his wife flew in. We took them over to our house, made Leonard. And we went out there and we pitched I got the Chicago Bears involved. And the rest is history. As I said, we just opened a couple weeks ago after 30-some years, full circle. Our house just built a $7 million house at the Broad Erie, and we have the Ronald McDonald House at St. Christopher's.
I'm guessing that nobody really knew back in the 1970s, 1974, that there would be 10, 20, 100, 270 homes catering to sick children and their families. I mean, it was a new concept. Nobody had ever heard of something like this because, like you said, in Chicago, families would be gathered in the cafeteria of the hospital eating out of vending machines. So, I mean, when you look back, over 30-some years, did anybody realize that what they were embarking on, Leonard Toews all the way down, yourself included, anybody realize what they were doing? There's
a couple little stories. I always equate it to the farmers that gathered around what they call Independence Hall,
sure.
Starting something called the U.S. Constitution. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe but first you start with a need. That need transcends race, color, boundaries, economics. I mean, there are Ronald McDonald houses literally all over the world. Mm-hmm. And I'll remember very vividly about the 4th or 5th house flying into the old Atlanta airport. And the guy who used to own the Ronald stores at the McDonald's in Atlanta asked me exactly what you said. He says, Mar, how many of these things are going to be? Now, we're in single digits. And I'm being Irish, and you can't put limits on prayer. I said, there's going to be a Ronald McDonald House in every city, in every part of the world that needs one. Now, did I know? Absolutely not. But there's so many good people. And one of the great things is each house services its own community. Sure. There may be the Heart Hospital in Raleigh. There may be the Cancer MD Anderson in Houston. And the power of sport to get teams like the NFL came through. Mm-hmm. Pete Rozelle, Leonard Toews, league meetings. In fact, the last city in the NFL not to have its own Ronald McDonald House is ready to open it is Charlotte. Mm-hmm. I went down there, walked out on the field with Ronald, looked at Mike McCormick's name on the stadium, one of our old coaches. But seriously, when you put good people together, and this is the power of sports, if they were going to have a Super Bowl parade for teams in their heart and their charity, the Flyers' wives, you know, the 76ers, the Phillies with their taking care of the guys with the Lou Gehrig's.
Sure.
I mean, and Eagles, you know, great charity they have right now, the partnership. We have always been and nobody's thinking how great I are, but you cannot put limits on it because the needs out there, and by associating yourself with your sports team, people will embrace you, and it's been a winning formula.
If back in the 70s that it wasn't the player's daughter who was stricken with leukemia, do you think we would be having this conversation 30-some years later? I mean, were sports franchises, teams jumping on similar missions back in the 70s? Or this was a really turning point, if you will, for professional sports, was it not?
Yeah, I think a lot of planets line up. I mean, Leonard Toews was certainly one of a kind, win the pot, very different kind of owner, very much embraced. We were very Philly factor. We were, you know, it's your team, it's not our team. And then when somebody was stricken, once again, the neighbors got together. She's 41 years old. She's in a nursing home. She's had 2 feet in heaven 2 or 3 times. The irony is Fred Hill's now a McDonald's operator in San Luis Obispo. And thank God, because her treatment and what she needs. But the question you're saying is, how did this happen? You know, it's like life. It's like, you know, all the planets have to line up. But I remember once I'd made a bad trade. I made a lot of them. But in the old days when they had the pay phones, and you could get saved in about 10 religions, I was at Rosemont College, and they found me. And I had it before the cell phones. And I remember looking down, and there was a sentence written 2 times, same sentence. Must have been Catholic school, Palmer method. And it just said, saying yes means a willingness to pay the price. Saying yes means a willingness to pay the price. And people watching the Philly Factor know what that means. And when you say yes, it isn't just putting up the money. It's that total commitment. It's really caring. It's watching a Vince Papale beat cancer and then do the commercials for the hospital. It's the Eagles being so intimate with their fans that all this stuff translates, whether it's the Eagles partnership and seeing if kids can be taken care of because they have a vision problem. It's St. Christopher's with a care mobile going around the neighborhoods to take care of dental work. I mean, this is a great Philly story. I have to write the book. I'm not just pro football, I'm procrastinating. But this story demands to be told, not for me or any of that stuff. It's by saying yes one time and putting a little prayer on it, you can't put limits on it. I mean, I've seen a million stories we'd have to be on for the rest of our life.
But Jimmy, how do you sort of balance your job with the Philadelphia Eagles in the day-to-day operations of the team, and then all of a sudden Leonard Toews comes to you and says, okay, Jimmy, this is what you got to do? I mean, some might see it as a distraction because now you're in a fundraising position where you never had been before. You said yes, now you got to sort of act on it. So how did they both sort of move along in a parallel universe?
Well, one of those phrases, you know, sports is great for cliches. You don't just own it, you give it back. Ray Kroc, the guy who founded McDonald's, you talk to John Durante, who helped build this house, or Chris Gable. Herbie Lotman, who's a Philly guy, played at Overbrook. He's the big McDonald's purveyor of meats. Those guys, we've been doing the LPGA championship for, gosh, almost 25 years right now. Raised $47 million. The Charities morphed into Ronald McDonald House Charities. Did it take a lot of time? Sure. Was it one of the reasons I might have had a shorter career? Maybe. But I've had a life. I could never put a value or pay back. But once again, it was Leonard Toews' yes. Because when Fred Hill came into his office with Fran Hill, he said, I'll send you anyone in the world, any doctor you want to go to. And that wasn't just Fred that he did that for. And you can't underestimate the Philly factor. I think God really blessed us because it started here. And we are a neighborhood town. We're about neighborhoods. You know, you grew up in, you understand, you didn't lock your door. If somebody in your house got in trouble, somebody just took care of things. And maybe that's oversimplifying it, and maybe the definition of what a general manager is or who runs a team or what you do. I've never been able to balance. I've already flunked Lent. But, you know, I think God gave me enough strength, timing, the Don Tuckermans, the Stan Elkmans who own the agency, the McDonald operators here. I mean, there were so many good people that it wasn't an accident, that this miracle, just like this country, started in the Philly Factor.
I also want to mention that these days, while not intimately involved with the running of a football franchise, you are a radio talk show host on the Big Talker 1210 WPHT. You and Steve Ross do a show on Saturday nights called Remember When, which sort of takes us all back down memory lane. How do you like doing this type of radio?
Well, Steve's a pro. He said he's been on every station in Philly, and we helped put Garden State out of business. That's where I met him. But he's one of my best friends, and he used to do all-nighters. And he'd talk about his kids or his mother and father. And, there's so much edge to talk radio that I'm George Costanza. It's a show about nothing. We talk about, hey, I went to West Catholic. I used to date this girl. We used to eat here. Hey, remember the Christian brother we had? Brother Denny or Brother John, who here still knows every kid's name that graduated from West Catholic. But the point is, it's like remember when you went to the Poconos and they said, that lake has no bottom. There's endless material. Yeah. I mentioned rumble seats the other night. Mm-hmm. Well, the board lit up. Yeah. I took my uncle had, or my grandfather had a car. It's just to make you smile. So it's been blessed. And we're on with an incredible guy now. He comes on the last part, Mr. Movie.
He knows everything.
He knows who wore green socks in Ben-Hur. Here's a guy who's a savant. I mean, there's no computer there. You ask him anything and Mm-hmm. So I think radio, television, newspapers, I've always dealt with the media. We talked about Bob Lyons, who was one of your teachers. And
my journalism teacher.
Yeah, and there's a good part. Media gets beat up, and the communication. If you have a company, you marry a company like McDonald's to a charity, you can get the word out. Mm-hmm. And then you put good people in there, like some of the names I've talked about. I could never say thank you to all the people that, Joe Nemi, who's the chairman of our board right now. I mean, we have local people there. Marlene Weinberg raised all the money, $7 million to build the St. Christopher's house. But she has a team. She has all these good people. So, and fundraising, we're talking about Newman College. We're trying to build a $25 million center, for sports and spirituality. Mm-hmm. Len DePaul, Eddie Hastings, Dr. Miranda. I woke up the other night and I had this flu. I flunked my flu shot. Then I had just come from a meeting, the Center for Autism, started here. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get $3 million. We're moving that facility. Then my buddy Bishop Galante in Camden, his guys come over. They need $12 million to help the schools here. And then Steve Ross calls me and said, "Mar, guy needs $4 million. He can finish this movie." I said, "I'm back to Pete Retzlaff, 44, and I can't pay my rent." Anyway,
I want to mention one thing because you have been honored and recognized throughout your entire career, but recently, perhaps one of the greatest honors bestowed on Jim Murray in September 2007, received the honor of being named one of the 75 greatest living Philadelphians. Those individuals made a positive contribution to the city of Philadelphia by touching the lives of so many people in their community. And I can't think of a more deserving individual than Jim Murray. And better to have the recognition as a living Philadelphian as opposed to after the fact. I mean, you get to enjoy it.
Well, Dunkin' Donuts did that promotion, and it was at the stadium. It was at
Lincoln Financial Field.
Lincoln Financial Field. And I would put myself 75th or even beyond because the group of people that were down in that stadium was just magnificent. And once again, look in the 700 level or whatever they call the top of that stadium. It's the fans. I'm the fans' fan. Mm-hmm. I'm still a fan. And it's very hard for Irish guys to get praise. We know our sins, and I'm just blessed that I can be an altar boy and part of a Philadelphia miracle. And the factor is Philly. It's Ronald McDonald House of Philadelphia, the first one, October 15th, 1974, where I was raised, West Philadelphia, where my dad had one job, Roman Catholic, and then worked for Penn in the dining service. Mm. The old days, that loyalty thing. So, we're lucky. The two of us are sitting here reminiscing, and there's probably somebody out there watching whose father, mother, brother, sister, somebody's used the Ronald House. Mm. There's no place I go literally in the world where somebody doesn't wait and say, by the way, my nephew went to the Ronald McDonald House in Houston, Texas, or somewhere. You can't put limits on prayer. It's been a miracle. I call it the McMiracle.
Yeah. One final question before we have to wrap this up here is that when you're standing on the field at Lincoln Financial Field and you look across the parking lot to where Veterans Stadium used to be, what goes through Jimmy Murray's mind?
Well, the first day I went there, Eddie Behan, who's one of the many children of my mentor, Art Mahan, who's the old athletic director and baseball coach. I went there the first day, and who's wheeled out on the field? This is when they were opening up after a charity event, Steve Van Buren. And all I remember is Steve Van Buren being the great guy who literally took the trolley to Shibe Park, took the snow off the tarp. And here's Jimmy Murray at Veterans Stadium, remembering number 31, Wilbur Montgomery, on that famous play when we finally beat the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And I tear up. I told a lot of people that, in fact, I told Dave Montgomery, we should have the X's and O's right there on that parking lot, because that was a moment. So I'm too Irish. I look across there, I see a lot of beautiful faces. I see Sam Procopio and Jimmy Borden, and guys who aren't with us anymore, Jim Barniak, and just great memories.
Well, as you could say, we could go on for another hour and a half here.
It's a mini-series.
Yeah, exactly. Jim Murray, the mini-series, exactly. Well, I thank you, my friend, for being with us on the Philly Factor.
Paul.
Appreciate that
St.
very
Paul,
much.
thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much. And again, tune in to Jim Murray and Steve Ross on the Big Talker 1210 every Saturday night, 10 o'clock with Philly season now. He may get bumped around a little bit, but it's a great show. And I listen to it, that's for sure. And I thank Jim Murray for being with us here on the Philly Factor. Until the next time, I thank you so much for being with us. Have a great week.